Hey, it's Dustin, and I'm here today to talk about Whiteface Mountain in Wilmington, New York. Whiteface is made out of three mountains, Little Whiteface, the Summit, and Lookout Mountain. They have 3,430 vertical feet, which is the most of any ski area east of the Rockies. It's 30% expert, 42% intermediate, and 20% beginner terrain, and this is over 288 acres. The longest trail is 2.1 miles, which is the Wilmington Trail that goes from the top of Lookout Mountain all the way down to the base. So Whiteface has 12 lifts, but most days when I ski there, I only ride about 3 of them. There's an 8-passenger gondola called the Cloud Splitter Gondola. This lift goes from the base area to the top of Little Whiteface. This lift provides riders with plenty of options, from blue cruisers to black diamond steeps to a few glades and definitely some bump runs. It's a nice long run, and it has about a 2,500 foot vertical rise, which is the most of any lift, certainly at Whiteface and across most of the Northeast. Whiteface has one high-speed detachable quad called the Facelift, which goes from the base area to about halfway up the mountain. This lift is great to get to either the Summit lift or the Lookout Mountain triple, or it's a good lift if you're a beginner and you want to ski greens and blues, or if you want to session some of the parks. Whiteface has one fixed grip quad, which is probably my personal favorite lift at the mountain. It services a lot of the steepest terrain there and also the slides, which I'll be talking a little bit more about later. But the Summit lift is a nice long run with plenty of pitch, and I love the Skyward Trail. I think it's probably my favorite groomed trail anywhere in the East, and most days when I go to Whiteface, I will session the Summit chair for at least half of the day if it's open. They have 2 fixed grip triples, one of which is the Lookout triple, which services Lookout Mountain. This is a great chair to ski, although the terrain over there is pretty limited, so I'll probably only ski it a couple times in a day. But there's a really nice black diamond trail that's decently long, and a really nice blue trail that goes all the way back to the base, as well as maybe a black diamond cutoff and a couple glades. This is a good lift to hit maybe 3 times per visit when it's open, which isn't very often due to the limited snowmaking capacity over there. Also, they have the Bunny Hutch triple, which is over at the beginner section, but it's a good lift to hit when you're first learning, right after you have graduated from the bunny hill. It is a little bit of a longer run, but it services all green circle terrain, and it's a good place to figure out what you're doing away from some of the crowds, and you can take your time and progress over there. Whiteface has 5 doubles. One is the mixing bowl, which is the bunny slope at the main base. The other 4 are kind of redundant with the gondola, and they aren't often open. I tend to avoid these when I ski there because the gondola gives you like a much longer ride, and the doubles are a little bit slow, and I just rather take the gondola. It's nice and fast, takes you up from the base, and if you take any of these other 4 doubles, they're only going to get you half the way up, or you have to stop halfway down and then go up. The only way that I would probably take one of these doubles is if it was like a really busy Saturday and the gondola had a line, then I considered it, but still, I think it's worth taking the gondola and going from the top of Little Whiteface all the way down to the bottom. They also have 2 conveyors, which are at the beginner section at Bear's Den. So I'm going to go over the pros, the reasons why I like Whiteface. Number 1 is the town. While there's no lodging right at the mountain, it's right next to a town called Lake Placid, New York, which has awesome lodging. It was home to the 1980 Olympics, I believe. There's lots of activities, nice hotels and bars, restaurants, as well as a bobsled track where you can watch races sometimes. There's also an extensive cross-country ski area and biathlon, stuff like that. Lots of fun activities. You can go dog sledding and see all the sites from the Olympics, like the ski jumping site and the ice rink, stuff like that. So Lake Placid's a really nice place to go after you're done skiing, and especially if you have a girlfriend or a family or whatever, they'll probably enjoy it. The next pro for Whiteface is obviously the vert. There's a ton of vertical drop, and it's continuous. You can ski all the way from the summit to the base on black diamonds and blue squares, and there's serious pitch. You can really have a nice long steep run, and there's not many other places in the east that are like that. I know Killington gets close on the vert, but there you're going to have to take 3 lifts up, and you're going to have to endure some flat terrain and arduous trail merges and turns just to make it from the top to the bottom. But at Whiteface, if you get to the top, you can get to the bottom easily, and it's a really fun run. It's a long run, and there's not much else like it in the east. The next one is the pitch. Whiteface has some serious steeps, and there's not a lot of places like it in the east. There are a few, certainly, but Whiteface has a nice steep pitch. Next one is the groomers. They have nice groom trails that are great for, you can go really fast, especially skyward, and some of these trails on the Summit Lift and Mountain Run off the gondola. It's awesome. There's basically one base and no major traverses. Everything is fast. It'll take you down to the same spot you started, and it's easy to meet people, at the lift. Also, the views are amazing. There's not many mountains in the East Coast that look like Whiteface. In a lot of ways, it looks more like a Western style mountain, especially the summit when it's snowy. I mean, there's no trees up there, and it's just gorgeous. There's really good views off the top of the gondola too. You can look over at Lake Placid and the rest of the high peaks in the Adirondacks, and it's really scenic, and it's nice. And the last pro is something called the Slides. The Slides is a side country area off the Summit Lift where you have to hike for about 5 to 10 minutes to get to a natural terrain, very steep zone. This zone was made by landslides that took away all the trees but left some of the trees and some rocks and some cliffs and some natural terrain, as well as frozen waterfalls and stuff like that. There are 5 slides, and they're really fun runs, especially because when they open, which isn't often, it has to be a good base and a decent amount of snow just to get them open, but oftentimes they'll just open for people with avalanche beacons because of the avalanche danger in there. And if you can get in there, if you have a beacon on a day like that, you can get fresh snow all day, often 3 feet of fresh powder because they haven't been open in so long. The snow just piles up in there. And even when they're open to the public, they're really fun, and it's unlike anything you're going to be able to ski at most ski areas in the east. I can't think of any other mostly lift service experience like that in the east. Maybe the snowfields at Sugar Loaf or Mount Mansfield at Stowe, something like that, but it's very few and far between, but they're beautiful, and it's a lot of fun, and it's really special when you get to do that. I think I've been able to ski them about 5-6 days in the past 4 years that I've been really skiing at Whiteface regularly. Now it's time to talk about the cons, the negatives. No mountain's perfect. First of all is snowmaking. Snowmaking's not terrible, but it's not the best. It takes them a lot of time to open some of the trails. I think the snowmaking on Little Whiteface is pretty good, but on the summit and on Lookout Mountain, it takes them a long time to open stuff up in the fall and in the early winter, and it takes a lot of time for them to recover after maybe a rainstorm or something that comes through. The next con is possibly the glades. There's not a ton of glades there. I think there's 5 glades plus the slide, something like that. What they have is pretty good. There's just not a ton of it. And at the end of, I think, slide 4, there's some really nice gladed terrain. And also on Lookout Mountain, there's really nice glades over there, but they're just not open too much. And there's some good gladed runs on Little Whiteface, but there's only a couple. What's there is good, but there's just not a lot. Also, it can get windy, and this can cause lifts to shut down from time to time, especially the gondola, because it's pretty exposed and it has relatively large cabins. This is a problem on windy days. You probably won't be able to ski the entire mountain. Also, the state-owned management makes some pretty questionable decisions from time to time, and there's a lot of bureaucracy when it comes to updates, and I will be talking a little bit more about this later in the video. But the plus side of this is that they do get a lot of capital to spend from taxpayers of New York State, and they're not entirely dependent on lift ticket sales. There are 3 major lodges. The base lodge has almost everything. It's where you go right when you pull in, and there's a rental shop and a tuning shop and a retail shop. There's a restaurant, there's a bar and grill, there's a cafeteria, there's lots of seating, bathrooms obviously. It's a pretty nice lodge. There's also the mid station, which is kind of halfway up the mountain, a little less than halfway up the mountain. They have a cafeteria in there, bathrooms, and a restaurant downstairs. There's also the Bear's Den Lodge, which is at the beginner section. This is where most of the lessons are run out of. There's also a cafeteria-style restaurant and a new bar. They've just expanded this lodge a lot. It's a decent place to go when the main base lodge is crowded, and you can get parking a lot more easily at the Bear's Den section. Otherwise, I would probably stick to the main base lodge unless you're a beginner skier. Okay, so that's basically it for my review of the way that Whiteface currently is. This next portion of the video, I'm going to be talking about proposed and previously approved expansion plans. So if you're planning to go there this year, you can probably turn the video off now. If you're interested in the future of the mountain and what it's going to be like going forward, you can probably keep it on. Last winter, there was a master plan released by the Olympic Regional Development Authority of New York State, who owns Whiteface, and they proposed 10 new lifts between Whiteface and Gore. I think 5 of them were for Whiteface. So I'll just go over the lifts first, and then I can talk about some of the other proposed expansions. First of all, they're planning on building a new detachable quad from the base of Whiteface to the top of Mountain Run, a little bit above where the current Mountain Run double ends up into Approach. They build 1 or 2 trails coming off from the top, and other than that, you'd be, skiing down Mountain Run, Approach, and all these trails off of Little Whiteface. On the one hand, I kind of understand this move because it will alleviate some of the congestion at the base area, but at the same time, it seems like you could just take the gondola up and get to the same spot. Gondola gives you a little bit of a longer run and a few more options, honestly. So I don't see a lot of people utilizing this chair. They say that it's for intermediates, but it would service just as many black diamonds as blue squares. So this is a little bit of a head scratcher for me. The next lift is also a little bit confusing because it basically would be between the gondola and the facelift. It would go halfway up to where the facelift ends and would end right around where the Mid-Mountain Lodge is. I don't see a lot of use for this one other than by beginners who might as well just take the facelift. So again, I think this is in an effort to alleviate some of the congestion at the base area. I suppose you could take this proposed lift up and get on the Mountain Run lift or the little Whiteface lift, the two doubles that are pretty underutilized. Otherwise, I don't really see a solid case for this lift being built. The next lift is a replacement for the Bunny Hutch triple. I think it's supposed to be a fixed grip quad. The current lift there is pretty slow, and I believe it's not even a true triple. It's like a refurbished double that they turned into a triple, and it just takes a long time to get to the top. So I think this one makes sense, although it's not going to be a big change to the mountain. The next lift would be basically a shuttle lift that would take you from the Bears Den mountain parking lot to the main mountain parking lot. I think the main reason for this lift is pretty much to alleviate congestion in the parking lots so that you can make use of the Bears Den Lodge and parking lots and then just take a lift over to the main base area without having to go up the Bunny Hutch lift and ski down. So this makes sense, although it's not going to really change the way people ski at Whiteface. And the last proposed lift is probably going to be a gondola or like a cabriolet that would take skiers from some of the more remote lots to the main base area. So this is basically just going to alleviate the long walk from some of the further parking lots and drop you off right at the base area. I don't think any of these lifts are going in for the 2019-2020 season, but I think there's a good chance that we could get 2 or 3 of them for the season after that. Other proposed expansions include 3 or 4 new trails for the Lookout Mountain triple, and these are much needed because the Lookout Mountain triple only really services 2 main trails, and that would increase to about 4 to 5 main trails. Apparently they've been previously approved, and it's just up to the budget to fund them and make them available to skiers. And I'm expecting this to come probably pretty soon, maybe within the next year or 2. Also, there's going to be a couple more trails on Little Whiteface as previously discussed that will go from the top of the new lift down to some of these other trails that already exist. Also, it looks like there'll be a new trail that goes almost over to the gondola line, and that could be a really great alternative to Mountain Run. It's just another branch off of approach. Also, it looks like they're planning on making a couple new trails off of the new Bunny Hutch lift, which will just probably be another kind of low grade beginner run. Also, maybe 1 or 2 more trails toward the bottom of the mountain. So I think the main change as far as like skiability will be coming on the Lookout Mountain triple, and that'll be a much more attractive lift and trail system to spend more time on. And I hope that these additions of the new trails will come with some improved snowmaking, because what's there already is apparently under a lot of constraint and doesn't really open until February most years. Okay, now I'm going to read some criticism of the plans that I just mentioned from someone who calls himself Colin Parsons, who posted on LiftBlog. He writes, "Whiteface, as I said, really needs to replace Mountain Run and Little Whiteface. They are both old lifts and it requires 7 lifties to run both sides, so it is almost never done. This results in big lines for Little Whiteface on busy weekends. Little Whiteface is not very reliable. Also, it really clutters the top of Mountain Run Trail, having so many lift towers for the mid-station on Little Whiteface and the end of Mountain Run side. I'd like to see one high-speed quad replace them both and follow the exact route of Little Whiteface with a mid-station at the top of Mountain Run. This would provide a fast lift to a large portion of the mountain's terrain that avoids the base. Also, it would allow for better snowmaking on Mountain Run because the chairs could be taken off the line. I think these are both really great points. These lifts would be used so much more if they were fast, if it was like a high-speed quad and it could take you from like the mid-station lodge to the top of Little Whiteface. I would session that lift because everything below that beginning spot of this person's like proposed lift is almost kind of a much flatter spot, so this would be like a really good spot for experts to session. Continuing with Colin Parsons' comments, he says, the current lift system puts far too much traffic on the gondola. It is the main out-of-base lift and ends up being the workhorse lift that everyone laps because all the other upper lifts are cold, windy, and slow fixed grips. They think the issue is out-of-base capacity when it really is all the people trying to lap the gondola all day. I don't think the new freeway lift will help with this at all. Experts won't use it if Little Whiteface is running, and there will only be one intermediate trail off it that I think will end up as more of an expert trail. Also, it would clutter up the top of Mountain Run even worse, by having a lift cross over just above where Little Whiteface mid-station is. The only reason they're going to build it is for the World University Games in 2023. They want to have direct access from the base to the top of the downhill and Super G courses, but it is not going to be of any use for public skiing after the event is over. I think all those are great points. I don't know anything about the 2023 World University Games, but I think that I will take Colin Parsons' word for it and say that not many people would probably use that proposed lift if it was built. He goes on, the new Bear and Bear's Den lifts are spot on. They want to replace the mid-station shuttle double that was removed in 2002. If the gondola goes down for wind or maintenance, you are stuck with a facelift or Bear to freeway to get out of the base. The new Bear lift would bring you right up to the mid-mountain lodge where you could get on Little Whiteface and access the rest of the mountain. Bear Den needs to be expanded as they just built a new lodge there and want to move all the lessons and rentals over. I guess that makes sense. I was kind of talking shit on the Bear lift earlier, but I could see taking it if the gondola was closed. But you could always take facelift and just ski down to where Little Whiteface is, so it also seems a little bit redundant, and I guess on a busy day would just increase capacity. Other than that, I don't really see the point of it. But for Bear's Den, I think that is a necessary lift, and it'll increase capacity for beginners and will almost kind of solidify their kind of quarantine off to the small corner of the mountain that is designated for beginners, and it'll be a great place to learn. The new lodge is nice, and if I was learning to ski, I would want kind of my own section away from people going super fast and startling me and whatnot. Okay, so this is the last part of the criticism, and I largely agree with this, so I'll just read it out for you, and I don't think I'm going to have a whole lot to say after this. So, here we go. Colin Parsons. At Whiteface, the biggest problem is that management has this misguided idea that they need to be more intermediate friendly. They won't focus on their strength, which is expert terrain. That's why you see them wanting to blast out more trails on the already dense Little Whiteface rather than finishing Lookout. The triple on Lookout is fine. No need for it to be detachable, and no need to build a long, expensive detachable from the main base. The Summit Quad could go detachable, and I'd love to see a Bubble 6 up there. I'm not sure about that. That's Dustin talking. But wind and space constraints may require the lift to stay fixed gripped. I see snowmaking as an absolute top priority for Whiteface, as the current system is quite possibly the worst in the East. I don't know about all that, but I see the point. There are also so many inefficiencies and constraints of where and when snow can be made, that is true. They didn't open Lookout till February 1st for that reason. That needs to be upgraded before any lifts are upgraded or new trails added. I agree with that. The snowmaking problems on Lookout are pretty serious, and that part of the mountain is taken out for most of the season. Like he said, it's usually only open end of January to early mid March, something like that. I see his point, and I'm always going to advocate for more expert terrain as compared to intermediate. There's plenty of intermediate, plenty of expert, so I'm not complaining too much. But as far as the new expansions go, I wish they would take a more sensible approach. Okay, so that concludes my review of Whiteface Mountain. In summary, I think if you are an East Coast skier and you live relatively close to the mountain, it's a no-brainer. You should definitely check this one out. I think it's certainly one of the top 5 ski areas in the East, and it's definitely one you are going to want to check off your list. This may not be your favorite number 1 top mountain, but it has a lot going for it, and I think everyone is going to like it.